Well, when I first came to Christ, it was through a lot of thought. There's no question about that. Um, I growing up I had some guidelines, some sort of a moral compass that I was supposed to go by, but for the most part, it was pretty much I was on my own. Um, I never really stuck to the religious type of upbringing that I had, and I pretty much went the opposite direction that anyone can go from that. Um, I hung out with a lot of friends where sexual promiscuity wasn't not only applauded, it was encouraged. Um, it became almost a game, and there were winners, and as sad as that is to say. Alcohol was always a part of my life. Um, Not necessarily because getting drunk was always the end result of drinking alcohol, but alcohol always being a part of anything I did. And of course, with that comes just making questionable choices. My experience with Christians during this time of my life um, was not good. Um, I was always concerned that anytime I met somebody, for example, on campus, anytime they showed any sort of interest in me, it was because they had an agenda. And it turned out that was usually the case. Um, I had a really bad taste in my mouth after an experience at my college where a guy would just basically, like, I just assumed he was coming out of class same time I was, and we were talking a lot, and seemed like a really nice guy. And then eventually he invited me to play basketball. I loved playing basketball, so I figured this is so great. And then I ended up talking to somebody else and said, oh yeah, that guy talked to you too. And it turned out that it was basically, there was no basketball. It was just a way to get a group of people together for a Bible study. And I was so mad. And that gave me such a bad outlook on Christianity, about religion, about its deception. It's about duping people and not about really getting to know people. So you can imagine after this time and having other meetings of this sort, I just became callous to the whole idea of God and faith. And there is definitely something to be said that my experience with professors in college had something to do with that too. Attacking Christianity, challenging those who had a belief in God, and I knew nothing about it. I wasn't a student of the Bible. I had a Bible, never opened it. So when I met Jenny, who's now my wife, I was a personal trainer at a gym, and that was probably the most hedonistic time in my life. And it was pretty much all about me and about who I could be with and how I could acquire more things. And during that time, I didn't admit it to myself, but I was definitely missing something because there was never enough. I felt like I was having a good time, but I never really felt content. There was always something different that I wanted to try, and I never dabbled in, thank the Lord, into super destructive things like drugs that could have taken me down a different road, but I was definitely still being self-destructive in other ways, ruining relationships as a result of not really caring about who I was with or how I treated them. And when Jenny started working at the gym where I was a personal trainer, she was so easy to talk to and so amicable, and it came out that she didn't work on Wednesday nights and she didn't work on Sundays. And so I would ask her, why aren't you working on those days? And she, of course, was very quick to tell me that she had church. And the second I heard that, it was completely, I was on the attack. So the moment I found out that Jenny was a Christian, I just went on the offensive. And I didn't speak kindly about her faith. I didn't even know her very well, but all of my previous experience, I figured this was the time for me to just lash out. And other than eventually later feeling really terrible about the things I said, the thing that was most powerful to me was how she responded to me. She never lashed out back. She never went back on the offensive. She never retaliated. She said, well, actually, that's a good point, but here's actually what we know to be true, or here's what we know, even facts for that matter, secular things that prove what her faith and what her belief is. And no one had ever come to me with facts. It was always very emotional. I grew up in a religious-based home that was much based on emotion rather than actually what's in the text. And as a result, as I mentioned before, I would never study the Bible. And so we went round and round, and really what I mean by that is I went round and round with her, and every time I had something else to say, well, how do you even know who wrote the Bible? I even remember this. I said, as far as you know, it could be a bunch of drunk guys thousands of years ago in a bar who are laughing their heads off right now at all of you. And, she came back with some very compelling evidence. And as she kept coming back with evidence about this, that, or the other thing that I kept attacking her on, evolution was one of them. And she presented something I'd never even considered. And I didn't know this, but I was thinking, man, she is really learned. Like, she really has a lot of really rational things, say logical things, grounded in even science for that matter. But it turns out she, along with her wisdom, also was talking to her dad a lot, going, okay, he just came back with this one. So it was really cool hearing that later, how the family was rallying around her, and really, when I think about it, really rallying around me. I mean, it was about trying to help me see the truth rather than we're going to show him that he's wrong. And I never ever got that sense, and that was really powerful to me. She and I would talk daily at work, and I remember she said, well, hey, what are you doing on Sunday? And I said, well, I train in the morning, but she said, well, what are you doing later that day? You want to go to church? I said, nope, football is my church. That was my answer. Football is my church. I watch football on Sundays. That's what I do. And she never pressed it. She never pushed it. And then, yeah. So even though every time she invited me to go to church, I said no, she never badgered me about it. She'd say, oh, okay. And, she'd kind of drop it, and then it would come up again a week later or something. But I remember when now suddenly we're getting a little closer than just friends, that I wanted to go out with her on Sunday nights, for example. I didn't work on Sunday nights. So I said, hey, well, what are you doing on Sunday? And she'd say, oh, well, I have church in the morning. And I say, okay, well, what about Sunday night? And she'd say, well, I have church Sunday night. And I'd always give her a hard time about that. Like, my goodness, when are you not at church? And so we hung out around church. So Sunday afternoon, I would hang out with her. Then she'd go to church with her family. And then Sunday night, I'd meet up with her again, and we'd go do something. And I loved hanging out with her. I loved her personality. I loved who she was. I loved how she carried herself and how she treated me. And yet, with all those things, the thing that impressed me more than anything else was no matter how much she enjoyed being with me, she never once missed church to be with me. Not once. And I recall thinking, what is it that she has found? What is it that she sees in church, in her religion, in this relationship that I've never seen? Because I've never known anyone like that before. And yet I knew that I was looking for something. And sure enough, I asked her, Sunday was coming around, I asked, what are you doing this Sunday? And she said, oh, I got church in the morning. And then she said, well, we can hang out afterwards. I said, okay, that sounds good. So I met up with her for lunch after that. And we hung out, and I don't remember what we did, but then she said, okay, well, I got to get going to church. And I said, all right, well, can I go with you? And I won't forget this, because she said, yes, like immediately, didn't even pause, just yes. And I remember feeling almost relieved that I was able to go and see what it is that she was doing. And I remember walking into the parking lot and watching people walk in with books in their hands. And I was just completely confused. So I leaned over to her and said, what are they holding? She said, that's their Bible. And I said, what for? And she said, well, it's to study. That's what we read from. That blew my mind. That absolutely blew my mind. That was not even anywhere near what I expected. I just thought it was a person behind a podium telling them this is what you are supposed to think, not let's figure this out ourselves. A lot of studying ended up ensuing with her father, with her mother and her father. I mean, Kim and Dean were just so gracious in having me over, and the more I was studying, the more I wanted to learn, and it occurred to me it was time for me to start making some changes in my life. And now Jenny was the only girl I was dating, and I was glad that was the case. I no longer was going out with my friends And it's not that they were bad people, they just weren't doing the things that I felt I should be doing anymore. And I do recall that I specifically stopped going to certain parties with certain people. Some of them were family members, and a family member came up to me and said, "You know, Jeff, I thought you were a lot more fun when you drank." And I said, "Well, you know what?" I said, "I'm really, really glad that you said that, but there are a lot of people in my life now that think I'm a lot of fun and I don't drink. So I'm okay with that." I lost a lot of friends. I lost a lot of close relationships that I had with family, with which thankfully over a course of time, it has all been mended, but my position in my faith has not moved. And I am so blessed that now I see church as a blessing, as something to look forward to, and I'm trying to pass that on to my kids, because growing up, church was just this obstruction to my weekend. And for me, the most amazing thing, obviously the converting power of the Word of God and the example of Jesus, and all the studying has really obviously converted me, but it was the people who led me to that conversion, the people who taught me about my relationship, and not just that this is a checklist of things we need to do. That has been the most amazing gift of all, because I understand what my faith is based on, and it's based upon my relationship with Christ, and it's not going anywhere, and that's a pretty awesome feeling.